Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello, welcome to part 2 of our Legends episode focusing on Denzel Washington. And regular listeners will know we did animated films, and we are very excited to go see Across the Spider-Verse tonight. And this won't make any sense if you're listening to this, because you would have heard our spoiler special before you hear this one.
Yeah. So this is greetings from the distant past.
Yeah. So we've got some responses. So Anton Kinnerlove, a regular responder, said Frozen for animated films. I actually really like Frozen. I think it's really good.
Nice.
I really hope they don't do a live action one, but I think it's just inevitable that they will at this rate. But who knows?
Yeah. Did you ever watch the second Frozen? Because I never bothered with that.
No.
So the reason I never bothered with that, to be honest, I shouldn't cave into what other people say, but I heard it wasn't good. And then a few of my friends who had watched it said they really didn't like it. So I was like, maybe I'll just avoid this, you know? Do you remember when Let It Go was everywhere? Just everywhere. I got sick of it. I got so sick of that song. That's a good song, but like everything, they just ruin it by overplaying the shit out of it.
And the B Critics podcast, hopefully we'll have them on at some point, and they went with Moana.
Yeah,
which unfortunately is being made into live action, which is just pissed me off, frankly, when they announced that.
Yeah.
For me, it's just an insult to animation that they're remaking these films.
Yeah.
It's just annoying. But yeah, Moana itself is a fantastic film.
Yeah, so I don't know how The Little Mermaid's doing and stuff like that, but a lot of the other live action Disney stuff I have watched, I kind of just don't see why it exists. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is the one thing a lot of reviewers say.
Yeah.
It's good, but it just doesn't need to exist. What's the point?
I just don't see why it exists. So that's kind of the only ones I've watched is I watched The Jungle Book, which I did actually quite like. I think it's probably my favorite, but I do prefer the animated Jungle Book. And then Beauty and the Beast, which annoyed me because that was almost scene for scene. Like they added some extra bits, but it was almost scene for scene and song for song. And you can't help but going, good God, the animated movie did it so much better. Just everything is better. It really kind of annoyed me. And then I watched some of The Lion King, and I still had the same problem where I'm just like, man, the animated film just did every scene better. And it's such a shame, you know.
I don't really understand how you call the Lion King one live action, but
it's not live action. It is a cartoon.
It's just all photorealistic CG.
Yeah, it's a photorealistic cartoon. Yeah, so it's just with me, like most of the Disney remakes, I just don't see why they exist, you know?
It's just a money-making thing, isn't it?
It's a gimmick, you know?
Yeah, it is, it's a gimmick.
You want to just see what those things look like in real life? It's like, yeah, sure, why
not? So my choice then for Denzel Washington films, I eventually went for Man on Fire, the Tony Scott movie. He's done quite a few films with Tony Scott over the years.
Spoiler alert, at no point does he go on fire.
Unstoppable. No.
He is not the Human Torch.
The Taking of Pelham 123.
Okay.
Which is a fairly good remake, yeah.
Yeah, I think I haven't watched The Taking of Pelham 123, but I have watched Unstoppable.
And he has worked with Ridley Scott as well, Tony Scott's brother, on American Gangster, which is a really good film. I really like that. I remember at university, I let a girl borrow my DVD, and she never gave it back to me.
Okay, well, if she's listening...
I want that DVD back.
Return it immediately, yeah.
You know who you are, and you probably don't listen, but...
We made this podcast just for this moment. So we would build up a following so we could demand the DVD back.
I want my DVD back, please. I also quite like Philadelphia. That's a really good one. It's more of a Tom Hanks film.
It's a really good cream cheese. It's like my favorite cream cheese.
Yes. I'm guessing you haven't seen Philadelphia.
I have not seen Philadelphia. I really like the music video for Philadelphia. I've seen that. It's a good song. I like that song.
Yeah. The Bone Collector I really like. He's mainly just stuck in a bed though, so
okay.
It's more of an Angelina Jolie film. But I really like what's the submarine one?
Oh,
Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
With Gene Hackman.
Yeah, that was good.
That one's really good as well.
I like that. Yeah.
So I nearly picked that, but I ultimately went with Man on Fire, and I actually kind of stole. Well, I didn't steal, of course I didn't. The whole misfire bullet thing I used for my character's backstory in The Souls Through the Trees, if you remember that.
Yeah, I always forget what it's called. I just in my memory. Like you hate this, but one of your lines was, the robots had big bouncy balls. Big bouncy balls of death or whatever.
No, the bullets went across like that.
Yeah, and I can only remember, that's the only line I remember, big bouncy balls.
I can't believe I get that.
So in my head, that's what that film's called.
Yes, don't watch it, people.
No, please watch it. Please watch it.
It's on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, buried deep, deep down. Yeah.
On my YouTube. But yeah, I really like this film. So what happens in Man on Fire? Well, it's basically kind of two films put together, which is a very strong critique, which was written about by critics at the time. But it basically follows a former CIA operative, kind of like a bit of a drifter, really. And he ends up in Mexico City and gets a job as a bodyguard for this quite wealthy family in Mexico City. And he is kind of very reluctant to become friends with the little girl called Peter, played by Dakota Fanning, and he's clearly got a drinking problem. Denzel Washington plays Casey, this ex-CIA operative who's now a bodyguard, and he gets really depressed and he decides to commit suicide. And the bullet misfires, and he kind of sees this as a sign to like carry on with life. He decides to have more of a relationship with this daughter that he's driving to school every day. So it kind of becomes this very like lost father figure and daughter relationship, like we've kind of seen with like The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. A guy who's kind of very a dangerous warrior type who is kind of forced to look after this child that's kind of has got a special talent or whatever. And then it kind of becomes like this sports drama, this kind of drama between these two. And he teaches her swimming and she becomes really good at it. And then all of a sudden, Peter gets kidnapped by these Mexicans, and corrupt policemen are involved. There's this like organized gang group called Alejandra, and he basically finds out like who is involved. Oh, and the drop to send the money to the kidnappers goes wrong, and they lose the money.
Yeah, and the kidnapper, who's called the Voice, his nephew, gets shot.
Yeah. So then basically Creasy is on a revenge. Then it becomes a revenge thriller for Creasy, and he basically takes out all the people involved.
Yeah.
So what did you make of this one then, Boaz?
So I remember watching this before. I have watched this before. I couldn't remember most of it, but I remember some of it. So I'm kind of torn between it.
Right.
I like the acting. I like the script. Yeah. And I like some directing choices, but by and large, this film gives me a hell of a headache. Just such a headache.
Yeah.
It's too much. I think it's too much.
Well, this is the Tony Scott way. So.
Yeah, but you know how we talked about some films where we're like, the director doesn't do anything special, and then we talk about other films where we're like, we really like it because the director does something unique. And, you can talk about under-directing or, I think this is over-directed. This is like over-directed. If that's a phrase, if that's ever been a phrase, I think I'm using it for this film. I think it's over-directed. It's too much. It's way too much. And I personally do wish that this film was redone and they dialed it way the fuck back.
Really? Okay.
So I do think it's really clever and it's very inventive. There's so much going on. There are, there's smash cuts, there's fades, there's a lot of fast cutting. There's a lot of zoom ins, zoom outs. There's a lot of tracking. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of like shaky cam.
Yeah. I was watching it and I was like, Boas is going to hate some of this stuff.
Yeah. So but the problem I have with, there's a lot of shaky cam, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of also flashbacks and I do like what they do with the subtitles as well. So there's all of this stuff I like. I just wish it wasn't all the time. Like it's every second, like just all of this at the same time, every second. It is pretty overwhelming. That's my major criticism of it, and I would say that's a pretty glaring criticism of it. We'll go further into this right now, but that's the biggest problem that would stop me from watching this again. It feels like it takes effort to watch this, so that's my huge problem with it. But I do like the film as a whole. I just wish he really pulled back on most of this stuff and used it sparingly.
That doesn't bother me as much as it does for you. Like I really kind of enjoy a lot of the undercranking and overcranking. And for those of you that don't know what that is, overcranking and undercranking the camera is when like you're putting the film in a lot slower or really fast. So then when you play it back in 24 frames per second, you get speed ramps and you get all these different lighting exposures go through the film. So
you also get, because that's another thing, like
Tony Scott does that all the time.
The colors change, like they'll go into a sepia or into a really faded, and then you also get that it flashes a lot, but I think that's the cranking, right, where it's going and it feels like the frames, and you can sort of see the flashing between the frames.
You get like really small like speed ramps and slow motion in there, and it kind of affects the lighting as well.
And there's a lot of other stuff as well. There's that kind of distortion that sometimes happens with the camera where things kind of go. It's very hard to explain, but he does something with it, and I've just got to. I don't see it that often, so that's why I struggle to comprehend what it is he's doing. But it does seem like it gets stretched and moved sometimes, the frame. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on sometimes.
Okay. I think that was the headache. That's when you were getting it.
Yeah, it's probably, where just before I lost consciousness.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, I think a lot of that stuff works really well, personally. Yeah. There are moments where I think it goes too far. Only one in particular scene where it goes too far.
Yeah.
But that's not my major problem with this. I've seen this a few times. It's on TV a lot when I was younger. Yeah. And I always kind of didn't finish it.
Yeah.
So there's only a few times where I've only seen it all the way through because it's always on quite late at night.
Yeah. I think with directing, I would probably need to watch this like 5 or 6 times and push myself for that stuff to, in my mind,
take some headache pills before you go.
Yeah, but it's just the thing, like, because it's so much and there are so many techniques and it's just all the time. As I said, I'm trying to focus on what's going on. And it feels like noise, there's just all this noise. And I think if I watched it a couple more times, I could filter out that stuff. But as it stands, it's quite a lot, so that's one of my huge criticisms, I think. If this is, I'm not sure how many Tony Scott films I have watched, but,
Yeah, this is the most Tony Scott film you've watched.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But my biggest problem is actually a script thing, which kind of really bothered me in the end, which we'll get into. All right, directing then. I loved how Tony Scott approaches like the montage scene when Creasy is going into attempt to commit suicide. I think it's perfectly captures how awful this situation is. It's very like crazy and has no rhythm to it, but it's clear enough for you to understand what's going on. You get loads of little like under and over cranked shots, which you expect from Tony Scott. And I loved the way, the shots blurred into each other. I loved all the small details too, where you just see a little bit of alcohol dripping down his lip, down his chin, being highlighted by the light. And you see repeatedly the bullet fall out of his hand. And then when he tries to shoot himself and the bullet doesn't go off, he drops the bullet into his hand and it stays there. And I thought it was a brilliant visual turning point for the character in that moment. I thought certainly with all the craziness of the directing, it does work there for me.
Hey, I'm James Lovino, and I'm here to tell you about Alternate Sides, a movie podcast with a twist. I've worked in the film business for 2 decades, but I haven't actually seen that many movies, and this has been driving my frequent collaborator, Sam, a self-confessed film snob, crazy. So every week, while he's stuck in his car trying to avoid getting a parking ticket, thanks to New York City's alternate side parking regulations, we discuss a classic film I've finally just gotten around to seeing. Alternate Sides, a new podcast about movies, parking, and a 25-year friendship, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and I like the sound as well because then you have like what's the word? So it's noise you're not meant to hear. You know, it's not in the scene. Is that diegetic where it's not in the scene?
Non-diegetic, yeah.
So non-diegetic of the piano play of Peter, and that's like his epiphany moment where it's like, and then the gun didn't go off, and then he hears like Peter's piano music, and then I like the stillness after that where it's like, whoo, and and then most of the crazy noises sort of stop, and so I like that. I thought that was pretty cool. As you're saying, it's like there's so much insanity because like obviously his mind is a complete mess. Then he tries to kill himself and it doesn't happen, and then it's like just slows right down, and I quite like that. And as you were saying, like where it just has the shot of it in his hand where he's like, how the fuck did that happen? But I think that's fine to make it really crazy for that point. I also like that it replayed some dialogue where it's like one of the first lines he says to in the film where he's like, will God ever forgive us? That's going through his head when he's thinking about killing himself.
And I find it interesting the use of the overcranking and undercranking on the kidnapper during the negotiation scenes. And it's just like a normal camera on the family and cops. And I think it just reinforces the POV of the family and obviously gives the kidnapper more mysterious feel. Like Tony Scott uses this technique a lot in the film, as we've discussed already, but I never found it annoying for me, but never really being overused. But it definitely pushes the line, probably over the line for you.
Yeah, way over the fucking line for me.
But the torture scene that happens in the car, and that's when the technique is of the under and over cranking did test my patience. It's still cool, but at times I just wanted to see the actors properly because it's just 2 actors in a car. Yeah. That's it. That was the only scene where it was just overused for me because in a lot of it, there's always a lot of kinetic stuff going on. There's always action. There's always movement when Tony Scott goes to that technique. But here, it's just 2 guys sitting in a room. So... I'm not sure it worked as effectively as it should have done there.
Well, like, I think another scene where they basically do sort of the same thing, but it works a little better, is where he's interrogating that guy at the club.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of cranking there, like, and a lot of really close-up stuff and cranking, and then cuts to, the dance floor and back again, and then cranking, and you're like, whoa. But that kind of makes a little sense. There's a lot going on in general, so
yeah, visually it works.
Visually it works, but I do kind of get what you mean. Like in the car, you're like, this is not necessary. There's
no. Just slow down for a bit. Can I see their faces properly, please?
Yeah. I think some of the the undercrank, the overcranking, the quite phonetic cuts, and the handheld stuff is good. I just think it's just way too much. And in scenes where I don't think it's necessary, I think it kind of detracts from scenes. If there's not much going on in a scene, I just don't know what the hell you're doing, making it insane, Like, it doesn't do anything.
I think he definitely does it for, like, atmosphere building as well. Certainly not in the traditional sense. Yeah. And obviously in the kinetic action stuff, but certainly in the torture scene, it just could have been dialed down a little bit. But sure. On the whole, I felt that there was definitely a purpose to it all. It was just that one scene where it was just a bit ill-judged for me.
So one scene I quite liked is where that he jumps in the pool and does the lap that she did, and then it almost seamlessly goes into a scene of her swimming. And so it's like, him swimming and it's like how she was swimming. And I quite like that. I thought that was a really good, like, cut. So yeah, there was a few things I liked.
You know, this film is really intense in the way it's shot, and a lot of like long lenses on the streets. And there's so many people all the time. You know, the crowded feel Tony Scott creates is quite effective. There are occasions that anything could happen in any moment, but then I love that contrast in the last scene on the bridge where there are so many wide lenses and so much open space, and it kind of made that last scene between Peter and Creasy more private and more isolated, like they've never had that before.
Yeah.
You know, so I really like that contrast in that last scene for me.
Yeah, that was good.
My favorite scene is kind of a scene where I always kind of find it interesting in thrillers like this, when you're expecting something bad to happen and you're waiting for that moment, and it always seems to be when the characters are doing something very mundane. And in this case, Casey drops Peter off at her piano class and is just sitting on a bench doing not a lot, you know. Then I was like, oh, okay, something's going to happen soon. And of course, it's when Peter gets kidnapped. You know, the action is just very Tony Scott with the over and under cranking, and he plays with, you know, exposures too. And for me, Tony Scott doesn't play the audience for a fool. Like, he knows you're watching a gunfight, so let's make the gun action look really cool and stylized. And he just gives you like the key information, like who's getting shot. But I think with this very frantic style of just picking out moments, you lose a bit of geography in the scene, but I still really enjoy the scene. I'm not sure like geography is that important anyway in the scene. Like, all you need to know is that Creasy is in a gunfight and everyone else is a bad guy, you know. Yeah. So I just kind of like that scene specifically of just making it feel kind of crazy and like really just picking out really cool shots. The one I always kind of remember is like he's just unholstering his gun and pointing at a guy, you know, just really kind of fast little cuts in like slow motion. Yeah. I love that. You got a favorite shot or scene, Boaz?
I think it's one of the first times like he's talking to Peter and she's trying to get to know him and all this stuff. And it's a pretty busy street he's driving down. You know, he's getting distracted, and you know, but there are all these people in front of his car, and you get like basically fast cuts between him and Peter and the wind mirror and just a bunch of stuff, but also the people that are around his car that are trying to sell him stuff or just having fun. And in between that, you'll get like a flash of a guy with a gun. And that, to me, I was like, what? Is there a guy with a gun? But then you'll get another cut of the same scene, but nobody's holding a gun. And then it kept doing that. So to me, I thought that was a really great use of visual language to convey basically how Creasy sees the world. Like, he's like, any one of these motherfuckers could have a gun. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of what I was getting for it. Like, you know, things are going on, but he's always on edge. You know, somebody could be armed. So I like that as like just kind of visual language for, you know, paranoia or something like that.
Yeah. I quite like it when he's just like, fuck it, I ain't using a gun on this car, I'm using an RPG.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Rocket-propelled grenade.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. I was wondering in that moment, it was like, how is no one seeing a guy with a massive rocket launcher on his shoulder?
Yeah. Another really cool thing was, you know, the C4 shoved up that guy's ass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things I do quite like with the directing is that subtitles are like... Because I actually like when films do this, that subtitles, they feel like they're actually there.
John Wick
like,
style.
Yeah, like John Wick style. I like John Wick style subtitles, and they do that. I like that even with the you know, with the C4 up that guy's ass or whatever. And he keeps referring back to the timer because, you know, he's talking and obviously he's forgetting that he's timed and that the timer will come up every time he mentions the time. So, like, the timer comes up, so you know the time, then it will disappear. And then you don't know how many seconds are left, and then he'll remind him, and then the timer's back up. And there was one bit actually in the car where you were talking about where the guy says something, there's subtitles, and his head goes over the subtitles, but it kind of like obscures the subtitles. And I like whenever you... I like films that do that, where, you know, the subtitles are like an actual... feels almost like a visual thing, like a tangible thing in the background. I like any time they do that.
You know, you could say that like a lot of the directing is really messy.
Yeah.
You know, but this world is very messy. Like Mexico City, It's kind of known for being quite overcrowded and quite polluted. So you kind of, I think Tony Scott is like a perfect director for this kind of world, really.
And, you know, like it's so filled with people and there's so much hustle and bustle and it's so noisy and there's so much stuff going on, but there's danger like around every corner. So it's just this, you know, so it kind of makes sense why it's almost like the camera is paranoid, you know, it's like, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? What's going on? You know? So I kind of get that.
And that's why that last scene on the bridge with just Peter and Creasy just works so well. Because you've just not had this before.
Yeah, I think, definitely the camera.
This loneliness.
Yeah, the camera. Yeah, it's just you've got wide open spaces. And the camera is like a lot less nutty.
Directing score, Boaz, for Man on Fire.
Yeah. So as much as there are some things I like, and this is going to be very controversial, but because it was just, I think, too much, I think it could have just dialed down a lot. This is going to be controversial, but I'm going to give it a 5.
What? What? Yeah. Are you fucking crazy? What? What, a straight 5?
Yeah, straight 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I cut your nuts off there. Sorry, man.
Man, that headache was bad. You sure you didn't have a migraine?
Yeah, my head was on fire.
Can I change my pick?
Sorry, man. Yeah, sorry.
Fucking hell. I did say it was tight on the last part. It could be tight.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Well, you said, like, this is going to be close, and I was thinking, I'm not sure if it is.
No.
I mean, you can bump it up. If you really like it, give it a 10. You know, I don't care, man. Like, give it a 12. If you want to, you know?
No, that's fine.
But, yeah, to me, I'm not, like, a massive fan of the directing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I'm not winning this episode. But I really like the directing on the whole.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, I just feel like, you know, Tony Scott brings across this very messy world in the directing and a very messy situation. It's just a mess, this whole thing, but it's done with a real purpose, and I think it really does achieve that. Yes, at times it goes too far, even for me. So, you know, I really like it.
Yeah. No, so, dude, I'm not putting it against you, you know.
I'll go like an 8.4.
Okay.
8.2, I think. Yeah. Subtle, this film is not. So
you know, this is just my opinion, man. You know, it's fine. You know,
all right.
I'm the dude. You know, it's just like your opinion, man.
5, Jesus Christ.
I think this is actually one of the few films that we've so fundamentally disagreed on.
Yeah. So I'm looking for a new co-host next time. Anyone give me a message?
Must like Man on Fire.
Yeah. Must like Tony Scott under Cranking Over Cranking.
Yeah.
Right, screenplay. The film is pretty slow paced with not a lot of things going on, frankly. And Denzel Washington's character, John Creasy, is very aware that he has a drinking problem going on. Going into this new job, being a bodyguard for this rich family in Mexico City, he doesn't really get on with the little girl, as we said, that he's bodyguarding, you know, taking to school, this girl called Peter. So you get the sense that he doesn't like his life, but it's not terribly interesting until he drops off Peter at this Catholic church, and the Madre says to him, the Bible says, "Be not overcome of evil, but overcome." Then Creasy finishes her sentence saying, "but overcome evil with good." Then says the Bible verse in Spanish in subtitles and says to finish, "I'm the sheep that got lost, Madre." And the music is quite emotional with the strings, and then you get then you start to speculate that this guy was a good guy in his past, and it puts into doubt that can Creasy protect Peter or not, or will he act, and will he even care, you know, in the end? It's just a really interesting setup that nothing really draws you in that much. There's no massive hook going into this film until that moment for me. That was the moment where like, oh, okay, I'm drawn in now.
Yeah, I think he does start off as a really interesting character because like he's just a drunk. He's got some sort of vague past he's not proud of. But then even when he gets the job, he looks kind of like a bum to start with, and then they dress him up and stuff.
Yeah.
but you can tell he's not interested in like talking, making friends. You know, he's just quite like dismissive of all that. But I do agree. I think that's really great when you see that he's got like quite a religious side, and you know, there's something there. You know, there's some sort of thing he's struggling with. Yeah.
Because the film was very, very in danger of just like losing the audience until that moment. It was like, this is kind of boring.
What was it? The husband. I was always wondering where that was going, and I think it was cool that where it went with it, where he does seem to be like a cheapskate. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're like, what's going on? They only hire him as a bodyguard because he's cheap. They're just trying to find the cheapest bodyguard, and he tries to even keep it secret how useless Creasy is to his wife. You know, it's like, just don't mention you're drinking, and that was cool as well. Where like the first thing she offers him is like a drink. And he's like, yes, you know, like whiskey on
yes,
the right.
please.
Yeah, yes, please. But I like the look of the husband where he's just looking. It was like, do you know what I mean? That was pretty good.
And I kind of like that where I think Peter's like, shall I show you around? Yeah, give me a sec. Drink my drink.
Yeah.
Like the film sets itself up as a kidnap thriller right from the credits. And the film sets up this father-daughter type relationship between Creasy and Peter that, like, we've kind of seen a lot recently in recent media. You know, and while you're watching, following these characters, you're waiting for Peter to get kidnapped. And you're 30 minutes in and you're still waiting. Then you're watching a character drama / swimming sports film that's really compelling, and you really want her to win the race. And you almost forget that this is a kidnapping thriller for like 50 minutes because their relationship is so good. You know, not many films like this would commit 50 minutes of this character development before the film you signed up for gets going. So I thought that was really brave and really commendable. The second half is just not as strong, I don't think. It just becomes pretty bog standard. Some really cool moments in there, but like the first half is a lot stronger for me.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the little girl, what did you say her name was? Something Fanning? Dakota Fanning.
Pitta. Dakota Fanning, yeah.
Like, she's really great. Yeah, she's just a sweetheart, you know. And it is kind of a shame when she goes because, you know, obviously she's got to go. And I think that's an interesting thing you make is like, you know it's a kidnap film, like straight off the bat. And what's interesting is in the opening credits, they show you a successful kidnapping. Like they kidnap someone and basically go through like everything he's meant to do like really quickly, and you know then they release the kidnapped victim, so you know how this is going to go. And so you're right, you're kind of waiting when she's going to be kidnapped, and you spend a long time with her. But you know she's such a great actress, and you know her relationship is so good with that. I kind of missed her when she went. You know, I like really missed her. I was like, man, I wish she was just like around. You know, and then they kind of, you know, do this, pull the rug from out of you. Because most films where, you know, someone's kidnapped, the film is them trying to get back the kidnapped victim. But they establish pretty early on, when the kidnapping goes wrong, that, like, she's dead. Like, they just go, she's dead. The guy's nephew died, and he killed her. And so when you're thinking about it, what is it that's driving Denzel Washington? Yeah, isn't, like, to save her or to save another victim or whatever. It's to get revenge. I am going to fucking destroy everybody. I like his little speech that he says to the wife where he's like, I'm going to kill everybody. I'm going to kill them all. You know, everybody who was involved, anybody that profited, anybody that looks at me funny. Like, and that's just what he's doing.
That was cool.
Yeah. And then I think it was kind of cool. That was kind of cool that it's one of those things, like, I like it, but, you know, and that it happened so far at the end and you didn't get to see her until right at the end, because you don't realize she's alive until right at the end. But the twist is she is alive, and that, you know, the bad guy is gonna. But I do like that because that's kind of redemptive as well, because he was only doing this for revenge. But when he learns that she's alive, he's going to stop his revenge and he's allowing himself to die. Like, he is giving up his life for her. So,
life for a life.
Yeah.
So this is one of my major problems with the film, is that after the failed kidnapping, they say that the kidnappers kill Peter. And not for one moment did I think that Peter was dead. Because if that was the case, it would feel pretty hollow, especially when they've committed so much time in the Casey and Peter relationship.
Yeah, true.
What's frustrating as well is that Creasy never really acknowledges that he thinks Peter is alive. You get a random voice of hers when Creasy revisits her bedroom, and you're like, does he think she's alive? And he does turn around, and you have like flashbacks of her swimming when he's in the pool, and at the same time, in the present, there's other brief flashbacks too. So it wasn't clear enough for me if Creasy knows that she's alive, or if he's just remembering his time with her. But then, as the more I saw Peter pop up in the film, I feel like it's a subconscious thing for Creasy that he does in fact think she's alive, even though he doesn't exactly explicitly say it. When Peter finally sees Creasy, I was looking for some acknowledgement from Creasy that he knew she was alive, but it never happened. So I felt a bit annoyed that it could have been more satisfying in the end. And I was still emotional, but I think they should have made it more convincing that Peter was dead, because I never was.
Yeah, sure.
Do you get that? Were you convinced that she was dead?
No.
That's my problem. Like,
I saw where they were where they were going. I think actually maybe they should have he should have posted her fingers, or like a hand or an arm or some shit like that. Like something really grim.
Well, yeah, not actually her.
Yeah, no, it's from somebody else, yeah.
Hand or anything. It could be someone else's, yeah.
Yeah, that would be like a really big double bluff.
Or you could have had a scene where like she's about to get shot, like in camera, but then he cuts away or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Because basically I think this is a tried and true thing because if you want to sell that somebody's dead, like film is a visual media, so if I don't see it on camera, just assume that it didn't happen. If some character just says, I killed this guy, unless I actually see it, I'm going to be a bit skeptical. So I guess they could have done that. They could have done a mock execution, or just something, or just a scene of them faking a death or something. So I think that you would buy it.
So, I mean, those last scenes on the bridge were emotional for me, but I was just like, this could have been so much better if he somehow knew that she was alive. There was just something there, because there's a lot of flashbacks and things. Yeah. I guess they were just going for this subconscious thing of like, he did love her, and he does say that in dialogue. But yeah, I just felt that the mistake the film made was that I was never convinced that she was dead. The film needed to try harder to convince us, and they didn't. Yeah, that's my major problem, really.
Yeah, sure.
And the second half of the film becomes a pretty straightforward revenge thriller, where Creasy finds everyone involved in the kidnapping and he takes them out one by one. Then when he finds out that Samuel and his lawyer were involved, Creasy confronts Samuel about it, and before you know it, he's shot himself. It's not really treated like a conspiracy plot, because all that happened so quickly. Like Samuel, the father, is just treated like a man on Creasy's list that he needs to kill, and then moves on to find the voice with the journalist's help. So it ends up being quite straightforward.
I think the dad should have been like the last person he killed, or he learns that last or some shit like that. I did think that was a pretty good twist though, because especially when it was like the police officer that stole the money, and they were like, well, when we looked in the bags, there was no money. So obviously the kidnapping was fake, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
And then it turns out, because then it kind of recontextualizes the plot, because at the beginning, the father is talking to his lawyer, and he's talking about how he doesn't have kidnappers insurance. Like it's ran out, and they need to wait an extra week for their kidnapping insurance. So he says, we need a bodyguard until then, and then you can fire him. So in the back of my mind, I was thinking, why would you do that? Is he that like stingy for money? Because it's like, even if you get the insurance, like it would be nice to have a bodyguard as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like having the lock, you get a lock to your front door, but you have homeowners insurance. Well, just because you got homeowners insurance doesn't mean you can throw away the lock. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I thought that was kind of silly. Is the dad that greedy? But then I think the twist makes that make sense, because you're like, no, he wanted her to be kidnapped. So when he gets the insurance, he fakes the kidnapping so that they can, his insurance can bail him out. You know what I mean? And I think he was going to use that money to pay his father's debts or something.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. I don't think you spend enough time with the father. So, like, I wish they also did that differently, that you trust the father, that you think the father's a good man.
Yeah, because it's established fairly early on that the guy's an asshole.
He's an asshole. Yeah, he's an asshole. So you're like, he's a negligent father. He's a bit of like an idiot, and like he's a money. He's really tight-fisted. So you're already like, there's something wrong with this guy. So when it's like he's involved in the conspiracy, you're like, yeah. So I think they could have done that better as well, where they're just make him a really likable guy. Because I think if you make somebody very likable and then it turns out they're the bad guy, you're like, oh my God. But if they're like a piece of shit and then the bad guy, you're like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Because there's that scene, isn't there, when Peter comes to see Samuel and he's playing golf indoors, and he's like, and Peter's like, I don't want to play piano, I want to swim. And he's like, no, you're playing piano. I've got the most prestigious teacher for you. It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna play piano.
Yeah.
So that right there, you're like, yeah, the guy's a dick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you kind of know that he's dodgy as well. I mean, you don't like with Mickey Rourke as well. He's the lawyer that's helping him out with this, and like,
yeah. Could you get a more evil-looking person than Mickey Rourke?
Yeah. That's the other thing I feel that's odd, that Mickey Rourke doesn't die.
No.
Like, Creasy doesn't kill him.
No.
I was like, hang on, there's a big loose end here that the film has kind of forgotten about, which I found kind of really frustrating, because they clearly mentioned that Mickey Rourke put the bags in the back of the car for the drop.
Yeah.
So I'm like, the guy's dodgy, why is he not getting any comeuppance? But he doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what?
Yeah, I think that's crazy. I think actually, if I remember, I think the father says he shot him before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember that.
Maybe recheck that.
But I mean, to your point with like the conspiracy thing, I just feel like he finds out the conspiracy that his dad was involved in the kidnapping, and then literally the guy is dead.
Yeah.
So I just feel like there wasn't enough breathing room for that to really come to the fore. And like, you get that one scene with the mother, but then that's it. And then it's just like he shoots himself.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I did like the way he shot himself. That like Creasy uses the bullet that misfired for him to shoot himself, because it could misfire for him.
Yeah, that was kind of good.
I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, no, I agree. I think he's not built up enough as an actual character. And I think when you also, again, you get to that twist, they don't like sit on it for a little while, which I think they should have done. It's like, you basically, you don't even find out when Creasy finds out. Like, he works it out, and then he just goes to him and gets him to confess, and then gets him to kill himself. And then it just carries on with the film. It doesn't like rest with that, where you could be like, dude, this is like a big deal. This is huge.
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't feel like a big deal.
It doesn't feel like a big deal.
There's no weight to it.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you read a synopsis and you went down and you go, the father was involved in the kidnapping, that's huge. When you watch the film, he's just one guy in a long list of people he's just putting down. Like, and Creasy doesn't even feel like very affected by this. You think this would shake your world. Your employer and the father of the girl, who you're kind of a father to, you're like the surrogate, that he's involved. This is a big deal. But the film doesn't treat it like a big deal, which I think is a problem from script point of view. But.
And also, Denzel Washington is Creasy is built like a motherfucker. The fact that he can take so many bullets and still live for that long.
Yeah. That was pretty...
Like he gets a bullet to the chest in that last action scene and still keeps going. I'm like, fucking hell.
It's like the Terminator. Yeah, some really menacing lines as well. I like many of his lines. So I like what was it, where he's at that couples in their living room with the RPG, and they're like, God says you must forgive, and he's like, forgiveness is between them and God. I'm just going to arrange the meeting. It's like, that is the most badass thing to say to someone before you fucking kill them. That always sticks in my head.
That was cool.
Like, I'm like, that is the line before you kill a man. They're like, forgive me. You're like, forgiveness is between you and God. I'm going to arrange the meeting. Like, that's just so cool.
The gunshot holds no fear.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, the gunshot holds no fear.
I think that the whole swimming stuff is really great because
Yeah.
it's the few scenes where you're like, yeah, these guys are, Peter and Creasy are really connecting. They're really getting on.
Yeah.
They're really like working well together.
Yeah.
They were known for being corrupt and now are celebrated for being dead.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I actually like, what was it? The scene with that cop, him and the female cop, because they got a lot of like just blatant sexual tension. And I love that one where, what was it? He hands her like some document that she wants to help Creasy. And he's like, here you are. And then he goes, when are we going to make love again? And she's like, we don't make love, we fuck. And I'm like, whoa. It's like, whoa, that's crazy.
I really like Christopher Walken in this film. He's got a good line where he says, Creasy's art is death, and he's about to paint his masterpiece.
Yeah, that was a pretty good line. That's a damn badass line.
I think my favorite though is kind of the line of the film, I guess, that sums up the whole film, and obviously is related to Samuel and both 3C, is a bullet always tells the truth.
Yeah, that was a good
I thought that was kind of a nice poetic line that sums up the whole film, really.
Yeah, that was a good line.
What's your favorite then?
I think, arranging the meeting between them and God, that's a really good one. I like that. That's pretty badass.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some other ones because there probably are, like where he blows off the voice's brother's fingers, and he's like, "I'm going to take your family apart piece at a time," and you're like, that is dark,
Yeah, it is very dark. Well, he just says like, "Your brother wants to say hello."
And blows up his finger. I'll take your family apart piece by piece. You're like, Jesus Christ, you've become what you sought to destroy.
It definitely. I mean, the film very much treads that line of like, is Creasy going too far with this? Like,
is he going way too far? Yeah,
there are moments where I'm like, yeah, you're losing me here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not on board anymore. I wasn't at that stage, but I think for some people,
I think he goes shy of just doing that.
There is that thing of just like of going too far.
These are bad people he's doing, but he is killing them without mercy. I think if he, who knows how close he was until like he knew Peter was still alive, because I think he could have very well started just killing anybody, like women and children and just anybody. But I think he was kind of at the line. So all the people that he did kill did deserve it. But I do feel like he was probably a hair trigger from just going nuts.
That's why I always thought that he thought that Peter was alive, because he's giving himself justification for doing it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just a revenge spree
that
he's doing. And that's kind of hard to connect with this type of character in this kind of type of film. Where he is kind of built as this character that's, yes, he's a badass, but there is a lot of good in him. But in that second half of the film, that the film is telling you that, yeah, she's dead and he's just going on a killing spree. That's kind of hard to connect with as an audience. So that's why I was like, surely there must be something in these flashbacks that's subconsciously telling him that she is alive. And as I said, I was just frustrated that there was no acknowledgement of that. But yeah, maybe it's just in that scene that little brief scene where you literally hear Peter's voice in her bedroom when he goes there again to find her diary. She literally says Creasy, and he turns round.
Yeah.
Because that was the point where I was like, there's something here that he thinks she's alive. Screenplay score, Boaz, what are you going for?
I'll probably go 7.7.
Really? Okay. I'm not sure I'll go as high as that. I think there's just... I mean, I was emotional in there when they were reunited on the bridge. Sure. That was great, but I felt like, again, it could have been so much better. And
could have been more. Yeah.
And there's just too many frustrations for me. And there is a sense that this is just two films stuck together as well. I do feel that a little bit.
Do you reckon it could have been like a part 1 and 2?
Possibly.
You build up the first bit quite a bit, and then she gets kidnapped at the end of it, and then the next one is more just
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's just the fact that the first hour is so good, and yet the second hour is just not up to that level at all.
I think that it would have been nice either if they gave they somehow still had Creasy and her in the film, like both together in some way, because I do like their connection and I like their story. So that would have been nice. Or, I don't know, or just have Creasy with somebody else that they can get that sort of connection as well. But yeah, the first hour was really good.
So I'm going to go like a 6.9. Acting then. For me, there's no obvious point in the script where Creasy and Peter start connecting. Like, for me, it's in an acting moment with no words, like right after the misfired bullet, when Creasy was trying to commit suicide. He's on the phone to Christopher Walken's character in the rain, and after the call, Denzel Washington is looking at Dakota Fanning in the window, and they have like eye contact, and they just have like a little moment, and like Peter can see a change in him. Like Denzel Washington looks so vulnerable in that moment. He's amazing. I think that's what's brilliant about Denzel Washington as an actor, is that he is so good at like being aggressive and being the big badass guy. Like there's no one better at that.
Yeah, alpha dog, yeah. But then he can just let that slide.
But what makes him amazing is that he can, like, you can see through his soul. You can really see so much vulnerability in him. I think that's why he's so compelling in all of his films, and especially these two that we've picked.
Absolutely. But I do agree, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, you're right. He can do this balancing act where he can be like just the alpha male, just so cool, the alpha man, and yet at the same time be vulnerable, or like just literally just like that mask can just slide off and you can see the vulnerability, and it doesn't feel like not genuine or like he's playing two different characters. It really works where you're like, I think he just does a really good job. It's just all in his face. It's just in how he does it. It's just it does make him compelling. Like I think any character he plays, it feels well rounded, because you're like, there's the strength there, but then there's the weakness, and it just works, Yeah,
both are always very clear to see, and you don't always get that with actors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, to be honest, he doesn't. I think in a lot of films, he doesn't even need words, like, to try and convey what he's feeling. You can just see it. You can just feel it.
Well, in that whole scene, there's no dialogue at all. So, well, after the phone call.
Yeah, but you just feel what he's feeling, and he just conveys it with like such clarity on his face. It's like you can read his thoughts,
I think Dakota Fanning is so good in this film as well. Like, such a great child actor.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
She's not annoying at any moment. I love that moment where she gets irritated by Creasy in the car because he's not answering her questions, and she gets out the front seat and then goes in the back seat. She doesn't act like a spoiled brat. She just looks frustrated like an adult actor. It's just a really nuanced little bit for me that I kind of picked out. And even when she's like running to Creasy at the end on the bridge, she's just so kind of raw in that moment as well, which is just so hard to achieve, especially for such a young actor. That's quite remarkable.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
That last scene. I mean, that's the thing on that bridge scene. Like, yes, I was kind of frustrated with how the story was going and what, and whether Creasy knew that she was alive or not. But what saves it is just their performances. They're so good together. I think the acting is by far the strongest element in this film.
Yeah.
That relationship between Denzel and Dakota.
Yeah, I agree.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're both phenomenal actors.
I think a lot of the supporting cast are kind of really good. I kind of did want more Christopher Walken. Like,
yeah, same.
He's just kind of not in it that much. I kind of wish he was more involved in the second half of the film. Yeah. Did you think that? Or
yeah, no, I agree. I definitely wanted more Christopher Walken. I think the other actors are like fine. But yeah, I do definitely want more Christopher Walken.
Because again, he felt like he had a great connection with Denzel Washington.
I feel that's like that was like a missed opportunity, because when he goes on his revenge mission, he does talk to Christopher Walken, and Christopher Walken says he'll give him what he needs, but he's like, he doesn't want to join him on this because he's like, I've told you I've had enough of killing. But I was like, man, that's such a missed opportunity, because they could have been like it could have been a buddy cop movie, basically. They could have gone around and done this together. But yeah, he does take a back seat, like way down there. It's kind of a shame.
Well, yeah, you don't see him again for like 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah, for fucking ages, you don't see him again. Yeah, and it's not even with Denzel. It's like with one of the cops and then he does that speech about how awesome Denzel is.
Because I kind of really like that moment from Christopher Walken when Denzel Washington's like in the hospital in bed, and he's just like, "Don't you fucking do this to me, man," or something.
Good, yeah. I, as I said, I reckon it should have become a buddy cop film with like Christopher Walken just like following close behind.
Then he's got then he reveals, you know what? I've had up my ass for 2 years. Plastic explosive.
Yeah, that would have been cool. That would have been awesome.
Here you go, Creasy. Here's a bomb. I ain't touching that, man.
Yeah.
Who's your favourite performance then?
Probably Denzel Washington.
Yeah, I think Denzel as well. For me, but like Dakota Fanning is really, really good. Like she's right up there as well.
Yeah, Dakota Fanning is really high up there, and I would say like she's a very close second, despite the fact that she has way less screen time. Yeah, she's a close second.
Acting score
9. I'm not sure.
9.
I don't know. No, maybe in the 8, maybe to balance out with the other actors.
And the fucking 5 as well. So.
I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm sorry, man. Well, I just did, but 8.3.
Yeah, I think the acting is really exceptional in this, and by far the strongest element. So I'm going to go an 8.8 for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the acting is my favorite thing in this film. Yeah.
Right, let's add up the scores then for Man on Fire. And at no point he is actually on fire.
No. Mistitled. We can sue them.
Jesus Christ.
I can see you're on fire. You're fuming.
Oh, God. Man on Fire gets 44.9. That's not fair, man. Come on.
Life is not fair. So just next time, just don't pick anything with Tony Scott. Like, I just obviously have a problem with his directing. I just, to be honest, actually, I think I've said this before. I have a problem with cranking in general. I just kind of don't like it. And I have a problem with handheld cameras.
Man on Fire is in the top 10. No, it's not. Sorry.
Liar, liar.
It's above Police Story.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
It's above Police Story in 17th.
Oh.
So.
Wow, was Police Story that low? I couldn't even remember.
Yeah. We really didn't like the script, I don't think, in that one.
Yeah, I think that was it. I think we butchered, yeah. Although, to be honest, like, as an action film, like, it's awesome. Like, I love the action. Jackie Chan is top-notch, yeah.
So, Training Day wins this one with 52 points, with Man on Fire only getting 44.9.
Man on Fire ain't got shit on me. Ain't got shit on Training Day.
Yeah. Next episode, as the last installment of the Indiana Jones franchise is finally here, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny will be out, and we'll be talking, yep, you guessed it, Indiana Jones films, and hopefully have a guest from One of Us is Bored. They were supposed to be with us last year, but someone went and got COVID, so I had to cancel. So thankfully they'll hopefully be back on for next time. Right, so it's time to say goodbye to the Mr. Encyclopedia Man, Mr. Boaz Dix. Bye-bye.
See ya, bye.
And it's goodbye from me. I am going to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and I'm very excited. Bye-bye.
Wow, that's a coincidence, so am I.
That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.